have Joe Goldberg on the panel. Not Joel. I keep
from The Last of Us
messing up. Yeah, because watching two shows where the protagonists are Joe and Joel
are one continent apart. It's too much.
Yeah, it really is.
Hello again, you, and welcome to another episode of What the Hype. And if you might have guessed, this week we'll be recapping season 5 of Netflix's hit psychological thriller, You. I'm Micah, and I'm joined by Pam and Laura. We recently did a You primer. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Time is
Believe it
all
or not.
messed
Time
up in my
means nothing
head.
Anymore.
Mm-hmm.
After COVID, time means nothing anymore.
That's so true. Probably means nothing when you're stuck in Joe's cage too. So
yeah,
maybe it's relevant to this conversation in one way or another.
Yeah, I love that thread connection right there, Pam.
It just might be, and plenty to talk about with Joe and his cage. His cage makes a comeback in season 5 of You, and we'll just say right off the start, if you haven't seen any of the seasons of You, especially this season, this is spoiler territory, and you've been warned.
Get out.
Or try to.
Try to find the spare key to get out of Joe's cage.
Oh, we have to talk about that.
I know,
key.
That was fucking
insane.
Wild.
Make sure you sew it into your arm before you...
like you do.
Mm-hmm. Let's start off with initial reactions to season 5. Feel like there was a lot of hype building up to this season. We're back in New York. A lot of old feelings coming back to the surface.
Yeah, I thought there were some really nice full circle moments in this season. And I also loved that we kind of got to see Joe's unraveling at a couple of key points. And that was satisfying to see just because, up until this point, he's been pretty smooth and that's maybe not a great word for a serial killer, but I think you know what I mean. Like he's just really good at evading capture, but also evading suspicious interest. Like he benefits from being really, really handsome and charismatic. And it is nice in this season to see that only gets you so far. Unfortunately, it got Joe way farther than he should have gotten.
People.
Yeah. But I did really I liked overall, the greater story arc. It was really fun to see some character cameos from prior seasons. I'm sure we'll talk about those in a little bit. I did kind of feel like, in some respects, the ending was nice. It almost felt like a little too neat, though. And maybe we can get into unpacking that once we get to that part of our conversation. But overall, You is a super watchable show. It's very easy to binge. Obviously, this season came out a week ago, 10 episodes, and we all got through everything in time to be back here a week later to talk about it. So it is an easy watch insofar as it sucks you in, and so you want to keep going. The subject matter is obviously very dark, but
yeah.
Those are my overall thoughts. What about y'all?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there is a point in every season where you really can't stop watching because it starts snowballing. And so I think that in this season, I would say that's about 4 episodes in when things really start getting real. And then it's I can't look away again. So yeah, I wasn't really sure how the season was going to stack up because it started off a little bit slow for me. It was really interesting to see how Joe had gone from, like Laura said, very handsome, very charming, but also now to being very much a public figure as a result of having a wife with a lot of power and having his story be publicly out there, but spun in a way that makes him look like a good guy. Like they call him Prince Charming a few times, or at least Bronte does, I think. She's a new character that we'll get to later. And so I think that also makes it harder for him to kind of disappear and be invisible, which is so strange because you don't normally think of like attractive people being able to like disappear, but he does a really good job of disappearing into crowds, and it's almost like he can't do that anymore. And I wonder if that's kind of the reason why like a lot of what he tries to do ends up being really sloppy. There's not a lot of like loose ends that tie up very neatly for him, and we see him struggle a lot even before a lot of it starts to catch up to him. And I think that that's what made this season so fun to watch, is that like not everything turned out the way that he was expecting it to right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. To go off of that, it made me think of, there are a lot of moments throughout the season where Joe gets those, oh, I know you, you're that guy. To your point, Pam, about not really being able to lurk in the shadows as much as he was able to do in previous seasons. I enjoyed the season. It was funny. I checked in to see, like, it was like, how many episodes do I have to watch? 10. Like, I was blown away by the fact that there were that many episodes, but as was already stated, easily bingeable. I actually didn't like how sloppy Joe got towards the end of this season, because it's just not his nature. And maybe we'll dive into this a little bit more when we start to talk about Bronte and whether or not he actually had real feelings for her, and could that have complicated a lot of what was ultimately the fallout for him in this season. But he just seemed to be so much more on his game in other seasons, whereas in this one, he was making misstep after misstep after misstep, and maybe he just had too much on his plate.
Yeah, or maybe he's just out of practice. And I feel like that's a good segue into, this, like, the new family dynamics that I know that you wanted to bring up, and, how that eventually escalates into Joe reverting back to his old ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly some fucked up family dynamics in in the group that Joe is now finding himself a part of. As we mentioned earlier, we're back in New York, and we're introduced to Kate's immediate family, who are all to varying degrees in a classic power struggle for control of Lockwood Corp. Kate is the current CEO, as was she was left that position by her father. Now, 4 characters, we probably could throw a few more in here, but these were the ones I wanted to talk a little bit about. We have Reagan and Maddie, who are twins. We have Teddy, who he's like the Jon Snow. He's like the bastard of the family, the outsider, so to speak. And then we have Uncle Buffalo Bob, which, great name, by the way.
Yeah.
But he is really trying to work behind the scenes to dig up dirt on mostly Kate from the time in London, and he's threatening to oust her as CEO. This is kind of really where the story starts to pick up and gain some momentum. And because of this, the wheels start to turn inside of Kate's head on how to remedy the situation. How can we go about removing Buffalo Bob as a problem? And so I'm curious, let's start with Bob. Do we think that Kate is at all partially to blame for Joe falling off the wagon?
I think Kate is complicit in that, because I think we get the comparison at some points throughout this series of, Joe's murdering really being an addiction. And so if you think about it through that lens, like, if you tempt an addict with any addictive substance, like, yeah, they might fall off the wagon. Ultimately, it is on them, right?
Of course.
They own the responsibility for that. But Kate knew how vulnerable Joe would be to that kind of suggestion. She knows about his past. Now, granted, he definitely recharacterized it and like contextualized it such that it didn't sound as horrible as it really was. But honestly, Kate and this whole family, they also have some skeletons in their closet too, especially Kate. Because while maybe she's not a direct murderer who, you know, is going out and committing acts of violence against individuals specifically, through her business practice, she has absolutely caused a lot of death and suffering. So her hands aren't clean either. And I think ultimately, in an effort to protect herself and her position from maybe some of that information coming out, she was looking at the most convenient way to silence Bob. And she knows that Joe has done this before. He's disappeared people before. So.
And he offers, right?
Yep.
He's like, yeah. So you can tell that he is interested. And
yeah.
But at this point, it's less that he is like trying to satiate the thirst, which he hasn't in a while, and more because he loves Kate, and that's his MO, right? Like if he loves somebody, he'll do anything for them, including kill. So as soon as Kate is in danger, it's easy for him to offer. And you're right, I think Kate knows that he'll do anything for her. And she takes advantage of that for sure.
Yeah. I want to tug on a thread you just mentioned there, Pam, which is this whole concept, and we hear Joe talk about it again and again, that he kills for love. All of this is for love. And I wanted to ask y'all, do we buy that? Do we actually think it's because of love, or is love the thing, not the person, his other wife that he killed?
Right.
Is it actually for love, or is love like a vessel for him to be able to keep killing?
I think it's the latter, and I think that he also corroborates that later when he tells Bronte that he enjoys it. So then
and you can see that.
Yeah, and so then it stops being about love or self-defense, you know, or like this warped version of love that he has, and starts being about the enjoyment. Those are two separate things. So he's been kind of gaslighting himself, basically, in my opinion.
Part of me wonders, though, if he just naturally feels like that is the justification for why he does what he does. Part of me believes that he actually does believe that, and it's not necessarily an excuse. That maybe that comes from him in terms of, maybe it comes from his upbringing. I mean, we got to see a little bit more of the relationship that, or he spoke more about the relationship he had with his mother. And I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to see her at all in this final season. We don't know a whole lot about like whether she's alive or not, but it would have been interesting one way or another for that reconciliation to happen. And so I guess a long-winded way of answering your question, Laura, is I do think that love is his motivation, his justification in the way that he understands love.
Yeah, I think so too. Because his understanding of love and like his concepts of what that means are pretty fucked up. And yeah, I think that does come from childhood, because his mom left him pretty early in his childhood, right? Isn't that
after he kills the boyfriend, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and like, granted, if you have a situation where your mom's boyfriend is attacking her and you have no other options but to like physically intervene and defend her, that's completely understandable. But I don't know, maybe Joe like carries some kind of wound from that because he's like, Mom, I killed for you to save you and then you left me. Maybe like it's all abandonment, and then when he realizes that his like romantic fixations actually have a limit to how into the killing thing they're gonna be, then it's like his mom's abandoning him all over again, basically.
I think you hit the nail on the head because he really starts to spiral after Kate like asks him to kill her uncle and then tells him basically that like she didn't love that side of him even though she brought it out.
She used that side of him. So
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
And
it's so easy clearly to paint Joe as the villain in this series, in this season, but there are other villains here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these people are like dubiously good at best.
Totally. Well, we are going to get into a character that I think we can all agree has a lot of potential to hopefully be good. But before we get to that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.